going to try to document my thinking in this trade because it's important to know where I went wrong and what I could have done better. I thought that this bounce off the 1000 tick chart was a missed opportunity, and maybe it is because on the higher time charts we still have a bullish move upwards here. And I just see that this is potentially a big move away from the 200, and it could definitely come back to this 50%, 60% Fibonacci levels, which is right at the 50 moving average. It can also come back to this consolidation here. So I'm cautious about taking a trade, especially in this range on the 10,000 tick chart. If I'm just blindly looking for a trend line break and a retest, I got it. But is it really a good idea? I'm looking at all the cons. We got it underneath the 200. It's underneath a trend line. The 8 EMA, which represents momentum, is flat. Could it break out and go up? Yeah, it could. But is this really a good time just because it broke and retested this little trend line here to get in? I've got a missed trade on it because of that one reason. It broke a trend line and retested. I've got my stop under that pintail, and so far it would have been okay. It hasn't broken it yet. And because I missed that trade, I've got a re-entry here of coming when this pintail came down, jumping in on this pintail. But to me, that's a more risky trade since it's under the 8 EMA. I like to have price pull back to the 8 EMA. When the 8 EMA is going up and price comes down with the pintail and goes back up like that, then I like to get in on the bounce of the EMA. Right now, this pintail pullback down here is nothing. It's below the EMA and it's no momentum. So that's quite dangerous to try that kind of maneuver. Although if it was going up strong and price was pulling back to it, it would be a great idea, I think. But right now, I'm just waiting. So let's keep waiting. So far, it's been proven good to wait on that. And like I said, it still may pop up, but it would have stopped me out. If I had gotten in on that pintail right there, I might have been able to break even. Thinking I don't know why anyone would think that this trend line and the way the EMA is going sideways, that's kind of some kind of a momentum pop up. But when you catch a trend line break, it's going to be going down. So you always are going to see, well, you don't want an overhead trend line. Okay, you don't want an overhead trend line. And you certainly don't want price going sideways. But right here, this first pullback would have been great if it was farther away from this trend line. If it had scooted way down here and broke and tested, and you got a distance to the next trend line, that's a better setup. It's just so up and down and choppy. Now this is just telling me that it can't be trusted right here, really, honestly, you know. So we'll have to wait for it to break this trend line, break the 200, and then pull back to the 8 EMA and show us that it's going up. So that's what I'll have to wait for then. All right, now without warning, it just decides to take off with some momentum, you see. Just decides to take off. It breaks that trend line. The EMA is moving this way now. So I'm thinking if it pulls back to the EMA, if we can check the higher time charts to see what's going on. 10,000 tick chart shows a strong candle back up over the 20 EMA, which is good for momentum. If it's over the 20 EMA, if everything's everything's strong this way, we might have another push up. We have to play it off the 8 EMA though. All right, even off of Fibonacci levels, even from this particular burst. So the 38 pullback is right where the 8 EMA is coming up. So let's keep an eye on it and see if we can get a trade on this thing to the upside. Also, we need to check the 2000 tick chart, always looking at the 2000 tick chart too, to see if there's any clarity. And let's see here. You see how it just chopped around right here and barely broke this trend line right here. It poked above and failed. It poked above and failed. Finally, it poked above and closed. But that wasn't enough because it was so much lower than all these peaks. And then finally it takes off. But which one do you trust? It's so tricky, you know. It's so tricky to try to figure out, you know, where do I move the next trend line to? Do I keep it on these pivots? Do I keep it on this pivot? Which breakout do I trust? And it looks like, you know, it may even just keep chopping around here. So it could be a very challenging day-to-day to trade. So let's see. It looks like it's just basically going back up into this range. So really, we have a range up here, it looks like. And that's not really going to be very good for trading. So let's keep an eye on that range and see what happens. All right, I'm going to give it a shot right here This is a pretty good place to try to do this. Let's buy it.
Order filled.
And I'm going to keep my stop right underneath the 8 EMA and right underneath that pintail that touched the 8 EMA. Now, it did pop up into, you know, the range. There's a little range here. It went right into the top of that range. Maybe it's trying to get back up into it, heading to this trend line up here. But if it doesn't work, I think this is a reasonable spot to try it, even if it fails. So I'll give it a try here finally, hoping that it wants to go back over this 200 moving average. And we're right at the, I'm going to put it right on the bottom of that pintail there, because if it touches that pintail, it's more than likely it's going to come back down. Let's give it a try. I hope it works. So let's see what happens here. Okay, it did not work. So it came down and broke that. You know what I didn't do? I didn't look at the 10,000 tick chart too closely here. Over here on the 10,000 or 2,000 tick chart, I mean, it's broken the trend line with a strong move up. It broke structure, and it's pulling back to, you know, 38%. I think that was a reasonable buy. It just maybe just chopping me out and just, you know, I don't even know if getting back in would be wise. My idea was probably good. Sometimes the idea is good and it'll stop you out on the tick. So, you know, it did what I wanted it to do. You know, it came back to the 8 EMA, and I got in on it, and I'm happy about that. I am. I got in on it when it started turning green, and it just came back and got me one more time. Boy, that's so aggravating, isn't it? And dealing with frustration and emotions, especially when it happens over and over, this is what causes people to stop trading or go tilt and just continue to just break their rules. We cannot break our rules when this happens. We cannot break our rules when we get emotional. We have to have control, and this is important. And even if this thing goes right on up, I'm going to be happy that I kept my rules. I waited for it to do something that I wanted it to do. I want to make a note about that in this video, that I didn't buy in the area that was going sideways. You know, I was tempted to get long in this area here, and I said, well, let it break out of this trend line here, let it go up, let it come down, and let it test this EMA, and then I'll get long. And that's what I did, and I'm happy. To me, that was a winning trade in my mind. I'm really following a certain kind of trade setup, and it's the certain kind of trade setup that we need to stick to our trade setups. And when they don't work, my notes said to me this morning, you're going to have losses. Get used to it, and stick with the trade setups, stick with the plan, even when you have the losses. Do not get emotional, and do not let that tear you down. Okay, so there we go with that. First trade was a failure, but I stuck to my plan. Okay, here we're waiting for another setup. I like it. It's a 2-try. Here's a 2,000 tick. Try to sell off near the 100, near some Fibonacci support. Trying to get back up into this range, I think. It's developed another range, though, down here. So it's moving from range to range. You can see this range right over here, and range right up here. And, you know, it's tricky because it could be trying to get back up to that range, or it could be using the bottom of that range to roll back down. It's above the 200 again. The 8 EMA is moving up, but it is a 2-try to sell, boom, boom, and a consolidation pattern. But low volume today, and it's very tricky to try. I will try this trade. I'm just trying to get in at a reasonable place. Perhaps the best place is if it comes back down to this trend line or the 8 EMA. And I'd like it to penetrate the 8 EMA and maybe even come to the trend line. That would be the best case scenario. And of course, it could just go right up and leave me behind. So the question is, am I going to wait for the best case scenario, which I think I should do on a day like this where it's slow and low volume, make it come to me. If it comes down in this area here, I should be willing to, anywhere in this area here, I think, I should be willing to buy it. So I'm going to keep that attitude and try to hold that perspective. Okay, it's hitting the 8 EMA right now. The question is, do I want to buy it right now or let it come down to that trend line? If I do buy it right here, I've got to get
Order filled.
I'm going to keep my stop down here underneath everything. Hopefully it won't come and get me. I'm going to move my stop up just a little bit. If it comes down to this pintail at the bottom and breaks this trend line and gets me, I may just stop trading for the day, because I'm just not getting the rhythm of it right. I'm going to put my stop in the middle of that range at the top there, and we'll see what happens. This will be my second trade today, and I'll just keep studying today, and I'll stop trading if this doesn't work. All right, well, it looks like it's got to my 1-to-1 target, so I'm going to come down here and go to break even. I'm going to break even. I move my stop from down here, this pintail. Remember, we entered in after price tested the 8 EMA, and it actually hit that trend line too. And it got so close to the 1-to-1 target that I went to break even. Hopefully it won't come back and stop me out. That would be underneath the 8 EMA, and it's been doing that, and it'd be underneath the trend line, and it could very easily do that. So I hope I get something out of this trade. And here comes the red candle. We'll see what happens. All right, let's catch up with what happened here. I was stopped out. I moved my stop, and let's see, the second trade anyway, over here. When it came back, I was stopped out for break even. Okay, price is developing past this trade, but I wanted to talk about this trade. This is the second trade. I closed it early because I didn't want it to come back to break even. It did I got back in the trade, and it did stop me out. I am stopping trading for the day, and let's see if I can keep my word on that. I can't figure this market out today. It's too choppy for me. I have to reconsider all my trade setups and make sure I'm following all my rules, go over my checklist. So I'm done trading for the day. And I think that if I can keep that goal and not pick up any more trades, that's a big improvement as well. Revenge trading will only lead to disaster. So that's the third loss. This is the second trade. I'll go into the third one in a minute. But what happened on that last one here is we did get in, and I got out early. And because I got out early, I went to another trade setup. So here's what happened on the third trade that I got in. I jumped back in it because it started going up. And here was my stop loss. And the thing came right back down to my stop loss and ticked me out barely before going back up. So the frustration and the emotions are pretty strong right now, and I need to stop trading. Even if I miss a big move, I'm done. And I hope that I can keep that word and not go back in and revenge trade, because I need to make this personality adjustment. This will be a psychological advancement for me. And studying where I went wrong is probably more important right now than taking a gazillion trades that I can't keep records of and won't be able to really track or study because of the emotional outburst. So I'm done trading. Let's study what happened, see where I could have done better, and let's make improvements for tomorrow. All right, so 3 losses and we're done. Let's study those trades and figure out what happened. Peace.